Hello and welcome to another edition of Crunch and Chaos. We're your hosts. My name is Nick, and across the table from me is Jay.
Hello, hello.
So what we're going to be starting with this episode is we're going to go through each house individually. We're going to talk about the general strategy of a house. We're going to talk about the commons and uncommons because you see them more frequently. Obviously, that's why they're common and uncommon. And then we're going to maybe touch on what houses go well, what cards you pair well with these houses, and then just our final thoughts. So we're going to kick it off. We're going to go right in alphabetical order, and we're going to start with Brobnars. We're going to start with the Brobs.
Yep.
Jay, how do you feel about Brobnar?
Yeah. So I think 2 or 3 of my best decks all have Brobnar in them. They're really good for board control. And then they have some like really shocking is a strong word, but they have some really interesting amber control too included in them. So it's a good but odd combo.
Yeah, they're a little weird. So Brobnar is my favorite.
Yeah,
because I like board control, and there are a lot of ways to gain amber from controlling the board with them. Cards like War Song and Loot the Bodies, which when you fight, which is what Brobnar likes to do, you gain amber. And that appeals to me a lot.
Yeah.
I like to be able to control the board and control my opponent's amber, all while gaining amber. And Brobnar is very good at doing that. So the general strategy of them is they are just big, beefy beaters.
Yes.
Their abilities generally aren't super strong. They'll have a few like minor come into play abilities like Bumpsy, who your opponent loses an amber, or Headhunter, when you fight, you gain an amber. These aren't huge abilities, but they come on really big bodies. Yeah. And then they're paired up with cards. There are 4 cards in particular. They're all common and uncommon. No, wait. Looter Goblin is not common or uncommon. He's a rare.
Okay.
But War Song, Loot the Bodies, and War Chests. War Song is every time you fight with a creature, you gain an amber. Loot the Bodies is every time you kill a creature, you gain an amber. And War Chest is an artifact as an action for every creature that died, every one of your opponent's creatures that die in a fight this turn, you gain an amber. You specifically have to kill them by fighting.
Yeah.
And those are 3 cards as we transition here into our good commons and uncommons. These are 3 cards you want in your deck. In some combinations, even if there's just one in there, you want some way to have that like burst amber effect. And then the other pinnacles for what I consider a good Brobnar deck is you want some big beaters, cards like Troll, Headhunter, like we mentioned, Bumpsy, Valder is actually surprisingly pretty good for a card that doesn't do much. Yeah, because Valder is
Earthshaker is really good.
Earthshaker is very good.
So Earthshaker, he's power 7, and when you put him into play, it destroys each creature with power 3 or lower. So if you're facing up against a shadow, as long as they don't have, because it's destroyed. So, if you're facing up against a shadow and he's got some Brunos out and some other things that are snatching up you just drop that and you'll get your amber back or stop the reap to steal type stuff.
And then Smash is also amazing, even though he's a bit counterintuitive because sometimes you're going to end up stunning your opponent's creature because when Smash comes into play, he stuns a creature. One thing to watch out for: if you just play Smash to an empty board, he has to stun himself.
Right.
But you're going to end up stunning a creature that you just end up killing anyway.
Yeah, and then you got from creature standpoint, you got Ganger Chieftain, like he's good. So when he comes into play, he's 5 power. You may ready and fight with a neighboring creature.
So this actually moves us into the next part of the good things you want with a Brobnar deck. You want things that allow you to either fight multiple times or fight with creatures outside your house. One of them is Gengar Chieftain. There is also Gauntlet of Command, which there was a recent poll on Facebook that Wabsy on YouTube did a video about the best Brobnar cards. This was the best one. It's just an artifact as an action. You can ready and fight with a creature. Does not matter which house. And then to round off that list, you have Anger.
Yeah, that's Gauntlet of Command, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
What did I say?
I don't know.
Oh.
just double checking. I'm just catching up with the conversation here. Yeah, Anger, ready and fight with a friendly creature as an action. So here's the trick with these. yes, ready fight, that's really good. But here's the thing, if they can't do the fight, they still ready. So a real neat trick with these is playing these cards too, even if there aren't enemy creatures on the opposite board, so then you can reap. So it gives you some benefits there as well.
Because of course in Keyforge you fulfill as much of the card as you can. So with Gauntlet of Command, you ready, you attempt to fight, there's nothing to fight, so you just ready. And because Brobnar is if you chose a Brobnar creature, since Brobnar is the house you're in, you can then use that creature to reap.
Yes.
I also want to mention Fall of a Leader.
Okay.
For the remainder of the turn, each friendly creature may fight.
Yeah.
This is a card that I actually don't have in a deck. So as we're going through this, there might be cards that we don't touch on because luck of the draw, it hasn't actually come up in our decks. And those are the 3 keys. You want like 4 to 5 good big beefy Brobnar guys.
Yep.
2 to 3 ways to fight additionally, and then 2 to 3 cards that gain you amber from fighting.
Yes.
Those are like the big pinnacles. And then good cards that combo is if you have Coward's End, which is destroy each damaged creature and loot the bodies. Where you play loot the bodies, you destroy all the creatures, and you gain all the amber. Or War Drummer, he shows up a lot in Brobnar decks. There's some really nasty combos where you can play a Bumpsy, play a War Drummer. War Drummer allows you to bounce every Brobnar creature and play back your hand. Yeah. Replay the Bumpsy, they lose an amber. The same goes for Smash. The same goes for Gengar Chieftain to allow more fights.
Yeah, and then when bouncing those back into your hand, the one I've seen is, I was just looking up here, it's an action, it's Smith. So you gain an amber when you play it, and then when it comes into play, you gain 2 amber if you control more creatures than your opponent. So that's a good little 3 amber combo that you can put.
Every house seems to have a card that just straight gains them 3 amber. About every house. I'm struggling for some of them because in I can't think of what Mars is, but like Sanctum has the best one, Virtuous Works, where it's just playing gain 3 amber. Yeah. And then Shadows has Ghostly Hand, which is if your opponent has exactly 1 amber, you steal it, and then it just gains 2 amber.
Yeah, I think Untamed is the healing one, right? If you heal 3,
no, that only gains 2.
Yeah, that's right.
I know Untamed has have a few where you have they have a few like that because Untamed is the big one that gains amber. So that pretty much covers it with Brobnar. I mean, there are a lot of cards. There are a lot of good cards that you really love to see in a deck, like Punch. Deal 3 damage, you gain an amber. Burn the Stockpile is one of the best cards in Brobnar, where if your opponent has 7 or more amber, they lose 4 of it. I only recently got a deck with this card, and it is busted good. It is extremely good to just sit there and wait, let your opponents just get to 7 amber, 8 amber, think they're safe to forge a key, and then you just drop them because they don't expect that out of Brobnar. Brobnar does not have a lot of ways to control your opponent's amber. That's not really what they do. And then, what else have we got here?
Well, I guess we could start, you probably want to start talking strategy with Brobnar with other houses. That works well.
So what Brobnar likes out of other houses are ways, I'm thinking of Shadows right now, ways to kill elusive creatures. Brobnar, their main way of dealing with opposing creatures is by fighting. So elusive is a problem.
Yep.
So pairing with something like Shadows that has Seeker Needle, Nerve. Yeah, I'm drawing a blank on some of these cards.
Yeah, that's all right.
But any cards that deal 3 or less damage directly, it just gets those creatures out of there, that's what you would like. Also, Brobnar likes to be paired up with other houses that like to fight, that fight well, like Sanctum.
Yep.
Untamed is another good one, but Sanctum in particular, where you can take advantage of things like Anger and Gauntlet of Command and use them outside of, and use those creatures to fight on your Brobnar turn.
Yeah.
And then Sanctum also has a few cards like, is it Sergeant Zachiel, who does the same thing as Gengar Chieftain, but he's a Sanctum card.
Yeah, and I've my most successful pairings with Brobnar are the one I have is Shadow Untamed Brobnar, which is a really good set because with Untamed I can start like Regrowth and World Tree and start pulling Brobnars out of my, so I do a bunch of stuff with Brobnar. I fight, I destroy some stuff. They go into my discard pile. I then play Untamed. And if I don't, if there isn't a bigger play, but then I'll start pulling those Brobnar back into my hand and into the top of my deck.
Setting up future Brobnar turns.
Yeah. And so the other day, so for those of you who don't know, we've streamed a game the other day online. You can find it on the Fifth Trooper YouTube channel. And so we were playing on the Crucible online. But yeah, I played that deck. And so what I would do is I'd have a couple Brobnar out on the field. I'd have Untamed, and then I would pull some of those other Brobnar back in so that I could steal an Amber from you, or I could, setting up the next Brobnar turn, which was really worked out really well, I think, for me, and how all the, especially with what's his name there, Earthshaker, like bringing him back to destroy creatures under 3 and under again. Bringing back in Bumpsy. That's a good one to bring back in. Stuff like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's see. Brobnar is also pretty solid with Dis. Like, Dis has, like Shadows, it has that straight board control.
Yeah.
It can just destroy things. And then their board control combined with Brobnar's board control means that there's a good chance that those important disc creatures, those ones that really mess up your opponent's day, like Succubus, who makes your opponent draw one less card, Shaftless, who makes them lose some in Amber, or my favorite, which is Ember Imp. Your opponent can only play 2 cards. It gives them a better chance for those guys to actually make it through a turn.
Yeah.
By being able to control their boards so that they're going to have something in their hand in order to do anything to you.
Right.
And even if they take care of those guys, you still have your Brobnar guys.
Yeah, and the other thing with Brobnar too is because of the power levels, they're a little bit more difficult to deal with from an opponent's standpoint, unless they have Sanctum or Brobnar or something that's focused on board control. So one of the things too is if you see that your opponent is maybe lacking a little bit on board control, I mean, one of the nice things is just reaping with Brobnar, because you'll have them out, and you can fight and try to do some board control, but if you don't feel like that's necessary,
or you're at a point where there's nothing to control,
right? They're just solid reapers too, because then they don't die very easily.
It surprised me how good Troll is. Troll is an 8 power reap to heal 3 damage. You almost never reap with him. You almost never heal that 3 damage. But having an 8 power guy who's just bigger than just about everything is super imposing. He is really tough to deal with. And traditionally in card games, a card that's vanilla doesn't really end up doing much, because a creature comes down to its abilities, and that has more of an effect on the game than just being a big beefy beater.
Right.
And in this game, being a beater it's a big deal.
It is. Yeah, and I think a lot of people, especially if you're newer to the game, they kind of misunderstand creatures a little bit, because your opponent doesn't have any health, right? It's all Amber based control. So, I think people misunderstand creatures a little bit, and they start using these creatures to just attack right away. And I think the Troll's a good creature for that, because he can heal if he reaps. But yeah, just keep in mind when you're playing Brobnar that they're not just there for attacking and control, that you can reap with them as well, and that's a good way of winning, right? And putting yourself in a good position.
It's interesting because in the community, Brobnar is not very popular.
Yeah.
Even though I think they're one of the better houses, I attribute them. They're almost like Red in Magic, because in Magic, Red is like the ugly stepchild. Like, everyone is better than that color. And in a lot of ways, it feels like with Brobnar, because they're quote unquote simplistic, they get this negative feedback that they're just not good or they're easy to play. And it's just not the case. combat is not easy in this game.
No, and I think I almost attribute it to because they're simplistic to play. For me, it's better in ways, especially if I have more complicated combos going on with like Shadows or Untamed
Or Mars.
or Mars. Yeah, friggin' Mars. That's for another show. But
I can't wait for that episode.
Yeah, Mars. But yeah, so if you've got a house or two that's comboed with Brobnar in your deck that are a little bit more complicated, it's sometimes a relief to know that you have Brobnar in there. So if you need to just like slow it down or simplify what's happening in the game, you have that opportunity with Brobnar.
Well, this also goes to the other point of you don't want a deck that's too complicated. Just like in any other game, you don't want to make a deck that's too complicated that you haven't played.
Yeah.
Because you want to be able to focus on the game instead of just trying to make your deck work. And Brobnar is a nice occasional. I choose a Brobnar turn. It's kind of like a breath of fresh air because I don't have to think too much. Like they are very simple in what their goals are.
Yep.
They're simple to achieve them.
Right.
And they just get the job done.
Yeah, and I mean, just not just like with the playing, but with their abilities and everything too. Like unlike Sanctum, where you're given your neighbors taunt unless they have taunt, like that gets confusing after a while, and then you forget sometimes about like them having armor on with Sanctum, or this guy gives that guy armor and this guy does this. It's like there's a lot to kind of keep control of and in your mind when you're playing. And so, I think Brobnar is just a straightforward. I think too on the opposite side, now that I'm like kind of talking about this out loud, is if I see my opponent doing all these like complex combos and like trying to like line things up for like a big combo or something, I find Brobnar really disrupts that quick and easily.
Well, and then it just makes your opponent super salty because you just take this basic creature and just disrupt their entire plan. And it's just like, well, I just did a lot of work and you broke it up with nothing.
Yeah. When your opponent spends all this time lining up all these creatures and then you do like a Coward's End loot the bodies combo and you're like, yeah, that's not happening. I'm going to wipe this board and earn a ton of amber off of that.
And you're super far behind.
Right. And now that whole turn that you just spent meticulously putting all those creatures in order so that they could feed off of each other just doesn't matter anymore because I've ended that.
And now you got to recover.
Yeah.
And get back in there in the next turn.
Well, and this, like any other game, I think there's a personal like morale that you have in the game, right? And so like in other games, like in this, if you lose all the progress that you've made in one turn, that takes a mental toll on you, I believe. So when you're playing competitively, Brobnar has this ability to wipe the board and to just monkey things up enough for your opponent that it almost makes them reassess their next turn, which is great. You want your opponent questioning what they just did and what they're about to do too, and
their life choices.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, and that's, I mean, to go to Magic, the comparison that we just made with Red, right? The burn aggro decks. I used to play one of those, and that was my favorite thing because burn aggro is the antithesis of control, right? So you play a burn aggro, somebody's got a control deck, and you're like, do and dead, and it's just so quick. And that's Brobnar feels like that to me. It's like, oh, you're gonna control and you're gonna do all this stuff. Well, I'm just gonna throw this this wrench right into your plans here.
And it feels like Brobnar gets out of control really quickly.
Yeah,
like when you're up to three or four creatures, like big beefy creatures, it almost seems insurmountable for some houses.
Yeah, and I would agree because you could do a King of the Crag, you could do a troll, you could have a chieftain, like you could have all this stuff out all of a sudden, and your opponent's like, dear God, that's 7, 7, 8, 5, 6. Like these are huge power creatures I got to deal with now, and either he's going to reap with them or he's going to start board controlling with them or something bad is about to happen.
Well, let's do one more little segment that I just thought of in my head. We weren't going to talk about rares, but let's talk about what our favorite rares are.
Okay.
For each house. So I'll kick it off. I just finally got a deck that can actually play the dragon. The Kelpie Dragon.
Oh yeah, I did just see that. Yeah, yes. That's right.
Yeah, you got beat by that pretty hard.
That sucked.
So the Kelpie Dragon, he's 12 power. He's the biggest power of anything in the game. And you can't play him unless you have 7 or more amber. Now, this is something that's not easy for Brobnar to do.
Right.
So you have to sort of finagle it. But the reward is you get this giant 12 power beater, and then when he fights or reaps, he first of all just gains an amber. So if you reap, you gain 2 amber, and then it deals 5 damage to a creature.
Yeah.
It is busted good. When I first started playing it, like I would attack like a 1 power creature and then do 5s to something else with 5 power and just kill them both and only take 1 damage back.
Right.
And gain an amber. It is so good. It is so gratifying. It takes over the game if your opponent cannot deal with it.
Yeah, I will say though, there is some ways to deal with it. So I don't know, you tell me, because I haven't really played with him, but it feels like to me when you get to that point where you can finally play him, the stars align, he's in your hand, you got more than 7 amber, or you have 7 or more, sorry, and you're ready to put him out. It always seems like there would be an answer to it, so you may get 1 or 2 turns out of him, maybe, if you're lucky.
Yeah, but that can just win the game right there.
Yeah, that's true.
It does take work to get him out, and if your opponent has a way to deal with him, like the harder they fall is, I believe, the Sanctum card that just purges the creature with 5 or more power. That feels pretty awful after you did some work to get him out there. But if they can't deal with him, you basically just won.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you have a particular favorite?
Oh boy. This one's gonna be weird. And
I think they're all going to be weird.
They're all weird,
because the rares are not what matters. The rares are these nice little bonuses.
Yeah.
And but the commons and uncommons are the meat of your deck.
Yeah.
And the meat of your strategy.
King of the Crag, he seems to really mess with people. And so King of the Crag, if you don't know, 7 power, and each enemy Brobnar creature gets -2.
Yeah.
So I like him because just up front, he's a 7 creature, right? And that's just a really nice thing to have. But then if you are playing against Brobnar too, and then they're going to try to go toe-to-toe with you with Brobnar, if you have King of the Crag, they no longer can do that because now they're at a substantial disadvantage right away.
Yes. Like I said, I like Brobnar a lot, which means I play Brobnar a lot. So I see King of the Crag, and he really ruins my day.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the times, Brobnar is my board control house. And with King of the Crag out, it makes that combat, it makes controlling him and the rest of the board extremely difficult. You have to deal with him first, but I'll always have to throw 2 Brobnar creatures at him.
Yeah.
And that feels awful.
Yeah, and like I said, it's a weird choice, but it's just one of those, it always scares people because he's a 7 to begin with, and then if you are playing Brobnar, you're in trouble. You start rethinking. That's what Brobnar does, right? It makes you rethink your strategy, and so that's what I like about him too. Is he does that as well, and it's situational, but I think he's still a really solid card for what he is.
And then the last mention, because it really fits with the Brobnar strategy, is Looter Goblin. Looter Goblin's 2 power, elusive. When you reap with him, he basically has Loot the Bodies attached. He's Loot the Bodies on a stick.
Yep.
He is super risk versus reward because he is a creature, which means he dies much more easily, but he does have elusive. But if you can get him on your turn activated, you get an amber right up front, and then you get Loot the Bodies every turn that you choose House Brobnar.
Yeah.
He's extremely good.
I saw, I think it was at PAX, saw a combo with him. They had Shadow and they had Shadow Self. So they had him next to Shadow Self, where Shadow Self takes all the damage from its neighbors. And holy crap, that was really strong. And then they kept just pumping out Brobnar and just killing stuff and gaining in. And I think at one point they did both. They reaped with him, did Loot the Bodies, and then started attacking with the rest of their Brobnar stuff, which was really good. So yeah, he's a really good.
He's one you want to look out for.
Trying to think. There's that what? Oh, here, let me try to find him here. The Mugwump.
I didn't get to play with him.
I haven't had him, but I saw somebody else had him. After an enemy creature is destroyed fighting Mugwump, fully heal Mugwump and give it a 1 power counter. Dude, he's crazy.
Well, I think, what is the name of him? We have this list up here of all these creatures, but it's all rock hurling giants. Discard during your turn. Each time you discard a Brobnar card from your hand, you may deal 4 damage to a creature.
So that would be really good with that Untamed combo that I was talking about with Regrowth or World Tree. And then, okay, yeah, I'm just going to discard these creatures and then I'll regrowth them back into my hand the next turn, you know?
Another thing is in it was either the last episode or the episode before, we talked about the power level, that there is a power line of between 3 and 4, and this guy just crushes that. He crushes board control creatures, and he crushes anything that would be a utility creature.
Yeah.
And I think the final one we have to mention is going to be Pile of Skulls. I have yet to find a deck with this card. I've yet to play with it, but it's obviously good. It's one of those cards that everybody talks about. It's each time an enemy creature, it's an artifact. Each time an enemy creature is destroyed during your turn, a friendly creature captures an amber. This is huge amber control. Again, this is what Brobnar wants to do. And then this artifact doesn't need to be activated. It's just always on.
Right. Yeah, it's a location. Yeah, that one's really good too.
Oh god, I didn't even realize it's even better than I thought. It doesn't have to be Brobnar creatures. You can kill them with anything.
Yeah.
And you're gonna catch an amber all the time.
Yeah. The one I haven't seen it go off, but I always want to is the Belgium Avalanche, where it deals 2 to every creature, each enemy creature after you forge a key. Like I've had it in a couple decks, but I never seem to have it out like while I'm forging a key. I always seem to get it after I forged a key. So
well, and your opponent is always going to do whatever they can to make sure that card does not go off.
Yeah,
because that card is ridiculous. But at the same time, if your opponent is going through all this effort to make sure that card doesn't go off, that's where their effort is going rather than trying to win the game.
Oh yeah, agreed. If you're tying up their
turn
to deal with you, that's stuff that they're not doing to earn the amber to move forward
to win the game.
With the game. Yeah.
Okay. On that note, that's going to wrap us up for House Brobnar. So our next episode, like I said, we're going in alphabetical order. We're going to hit House Dis.
Yep.
So until next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Take it easy, everybody.
This has been a Fifth Trooper production.